Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome back to the Teacher Mindset Podcast, where we are tackling the real life challenges educators face, talking about the tools and mindset shifts that can not just help us survive, but thrive as well. And today's guest brings a very unique combination of experiences to the table. He is Dr. Albert Bramante. He's a licensed psychologist and a talent agent, which is quite interesting. And he does focus on helping actors break into the business, but he's also focused on helping them break through their own mental blocks. And that's why I wanted to have him on the show because we are all about mindset, and mindset transverses over all jobs. Everybody needs help with mindset. So he has 20 years of experience teaching psychology at colleges across North America. He's helped thousands of people overcome their inner roadblocks that sabotage their success, right? That self-sabotage that many of us know so well. I'm sure you know it. I know it. Albert knows it. And we are diving deep into boundaries, burnout, and that dreaded self sabotage cycle today to help you rewrite your inner script and, of course, reclaim your power. So let's welcome Dr. Albert Bramante to the show. Dr. Bramante, thank you so much for being here.
I really want to thank you, Marissa, for having me. I'm so happy to be here and have this conversation with you and your audience.
Amazing. I cannot wait. So I want to start where if you could imagine that you are talking directly to the person listening and they want to know more about self-sabotage, can you explain sort of what it looks like and maybe give us some strategies on what we should say or do to help stop it? That would be great.
Well, that's a very good question. And it's self sabotage is very sneaky because it's not something we realize we're doing on a conscious level. It's not something we say, hey, today I've been self sabotaging, I have a bad day. It's more of a pervasive pattern of behavior. So, and it could look like in different situations, different contexts. So, as you said the intro, my expertise is a lot with actors and also with college students. So I'll give you some examples in both categories. For actors, it would be like late to auditions, not preparing for auditions, not deciding at the last minute not to show up for an audition, not giving your best in a role. And as far as students, because I worked with thousands of college students over the years, so that would mean like not coming to class, stop coming to class, stop studying, don't even read the textbook, or just blow off the material. Now, this is all these types of behaviors I'm describing are lowering your profile in a sense and lowering your chances of success. So it's getting in your own way. So really it's being your own worst enemy. And I've often sometimes say your worst enemy sometimes is the one staring at you back in the mirror.
Yeah.
So and the one of the way some ways to get to kind of work through that is to first acknowledge that it's happening. And that's a major step. Because a lot of times you may be thinking, why is the world so against me? Why is everyone so against me? So it's almost like playing the victim mentality to a certain level. It's like playing the role of the victim by saying, why can't anything go right? Or why is everything going so wrong in my life? So the important thing is kind of taking accountability. Number one, I don't mean blame. I'm talking about accountability. So that would be one step I would say. The first thing is take accountability, take a realization, and then we'll find out. Now, everyone's situation is unique, so I can't
Okay.
necessarily 100% generalize. Okay, this is really why it's happening. So this is why it's important to go through like a mindset coach like yourself or somebody else who can work through whatever subconscious blocks you may have. That may be running in your head or through that, and it could be due to childhood issues. Maybe you were taking on trauma from our childhood, or we're just going based on previous failures that we've experienced and internalizing those failures, and those are preventing us from moving forward today. So though there could be a whole host of reasons, but the first step is taking accountability, and then the second step is to work through whatever block you're experiencing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I've seen this with clients that I've coached as well. Once you start to realize that do have control over certain things when it comes to you sabotaging your own success, and you actually start to acknowledge, okay, I need to take some responsibility here. What am I doing? What can I do differently? What could I implement into my everyday? How can I change the way I show up? What small habit can I change? What can I do, each day to make it better? It does start to add up, right? And it does start to get a lot better, and just never give up on yourself. Recognize that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So in your book, you actually talk about fears, and not just the fear of failure, but the fear of success. And that one I really found particularly interesting because I work a lot with teachers, and I feel like this is often what stops teachers from using their skill set to shift their identity out of teacher, quote unquote, and into something more, where they're using their skill set to do something more than just being a teacher. So, can you
Mhm.
explain how, like, the fear of success might be holding some of us back more than we realize? And if you were giving advice to someone like that, what sort of advice would you give them?
Well, just like with self sabotage, most people don't realize that it's actually weird success. They may acknowledge it as some type of fear, but the actual target of fear might be success, and that's going to hold us back, no matter how we look at it. So, I think the first step is acknowledge that that might be a possibility, that it might be a chance that this is what's occurring. The one thing I would suggest to do is, again, take a hard step back and look at what exactly are you afraid of. And most of the time, it's fear of change. It's fear of that could be a change in our identity.
Mhm.
Now, maybe for a teacher, what that could look like would be, now that there's a little bit more pressure on them, that they've always got to be. They had this great class, and this great year even, and now it's like, okay, now they're going to live up to that every year. And of course they can do it, but it's just they have to see that that can happen. Um, it could also be fear of what other people are going to think of us. Now, in the context of artists and actors, there's can be, it's a very supportive community, but there can also be a lot of jealousy, sometimes even within the family and within the immediate circle of the performer. So there's a fear of losing relationships. And I even talk about this in a chapter in my book, the fear of losing relationships, because that I don't want to say that that's a reality, but it's a possibility.
Mhm.
That while our family and our friends, we want to think that they have the best, if most of the time they do, but they could also be threatened by our success and threatened by us moving forward, that they may not be entirely supportive, and that can be scary. That can be really, really scary. And I would imagine, so for teachers, let's say you come into a family where they really didn't want you to be a teacher.
Okay.
They wanted you to do something else, because sometimes, and this is, I think, of course, being that I'm an educator myself, I think this is the most important job. It's not always looked upon positively,
Right.
teacher, by lay people or people that are not familiar with the profession. So you may get messages, oh, I want you to do something better with your life. Why are you a teacher? Why are you just a teacher? Again, I just think it's changing the mindset of and your approach. So looking at yourself as being more successful than anything. And a lot of people don't like to brag. That's too. It's like, I'm just a teacher, or they play humble a little too much, where it's like, they don't really take credit for their success. They're quick to blame themselves, but to take credit for success can be sometimes very difficult.
Yes, no, I hear what you're saying, and I think sometimes, teachers do underestimate how important their job is, and other people underestimate, I think, sometimes how important their
Mhm.
job is. And I always want teachers to look at, the possibility of going out and trying something different if they want, and understanding that people around them may very well try to sabotage that dream that they have, but you are doing this for yourself. You're not doing this for anybody else, right? Sometimes
Right. Oh yeah.
you have to try.
And and sometimes it may seem like a lonely island at some time, but that's the real truth. I mean, and that regards for any profession, whether a teacher, whether it's an actor, or a salesperson, or doctor. The important thing is you to be doing it for your own reason and to really, even if worst case scenario nobody supports you, you should be supporting yourself. I mean, that's the whole reason. And as an adult, this is going to sound a little harsh, but you don't owe an explanation to anybody, to do whatever it is you want to do. So if if being a teacher is in your blood and really what you love to do, then by all means go for it. It is a very important job, especially in primary school, because you're talking about you're really molding the child's mind, and in some cases, you may actually be the second parent, an
Yeah,
official second parent to the child, especially if their home life may not be so good. The school can sometimes be their sanctuary.
absolutely. No, I've been called mom many times. I wanted to talk about setting boundaries for a second.
Mhm,
Because I know we've talked about that in the past, and that is
mhm,
often an issue with teachers. Like we say, many teachers I know, and this was me at the beginning of my teaching career for sure. We say yes out of guilt or habit, just it's something we've
mhm.
always done. And I really want to help teachers with that whole concept of setting boundaries. So, what advice do you have for setting boundaries without feeling like you're letting people down or risking relationships? Which, again, I feel is kind of the reason maybe we need to set boundaries. Like, if you're letting someone down, I suppose to me, I'm like, that's a you problem. That's a them problem. It's not even
Yeah.
like I don't know what.
Well, absolutely. I mean, are the requests being asked within the traditional job description and during the job, performance hours? Then, of course, and yeah, then I would obviously look into, you know, complying with that. However, if it's outside duty that are not within the job description or contract that you were hired for, then that's where boundaries have to come in to some level. Now, it's natural for us, especially the younger we are. We want to please people. We want to make our bosses happy. We want to make our coworkers happy, and and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, if we're burnt out, we're not going to be good for anybody. The students, the school, the staff. So what I would say is you can say no in a very firm, very loving but firm way, in a very nurturing way. Thank you for this. Unfortunately, this is not going to work for me. My weekend is really for my family. However, what can I do to help today, or what can I do to help you on Monday morning? You know, we can tackle this together on Monday morning. I'll be happy to do that. Or, I'm going home for today. I have to, whatever it is, I need my time, and then tomorrow I'll go back and we'll do this, together. So, and you could say very firm and and if you're so worried, the natural tendency to say yes all the time is we don't want people to be upset with us.
Right.
The one thing we don't want to do is disappoint people. But if someone's going to get really disappointed and really upset because you said no to something that's not technically in your job description or in your you know scheduled time, and they're going to get really upset, is that somebody you really want to be working with or working for? And that's something you have to question. So, and as you know, I really have direct personal experience with this. 100%. I was the yes man for most of my life. You asked me to do anything, I did it gladly.
Like, how did you shift from being a yes person to someone who sets clearer limits?
I think learning kind of the hard way, falling on my face, is really what did
Yep.
it for me. And that's how a lot of us learn. The thing about it is by kind of hitting rock bottom. So I one of the colleges I was teaching at, I was hired full time, tenure track, and I was only 30 years old at the time. So it was exciting. It was like, this is going to be my career. I love what I do. I love being here. And it slowly took into a situation where it was being taken advantage of, but I didn't see it that way at first because I was so excited. I had bright eyes. And so it started with, okay, you're going to teach 5 classes a semester,
Okay.
which is the full time load, which is at this college is the minimum full time load. Now all of a sudden, I was getting bombarded with emails saying, "Hey, this person is not available. This class is open. Can you take this? Can you take this class? Can you take that class?"
Right.
And sure, 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 sure. I'm thinking at this point, oh, the more the merrier. I love teaching. I love being with the students. So I found myself on an average of teaching 10 to 12 classes a semester, which is equivalent of 2 full-time loads. And I was teaching winter session, summer session. So, and at first, for the first year and a half, I was like all gung ho, like, yeah, I love this. And I'm not gonna lie, the pay, the overtime pay was amazing.
Right.
You know, for a entry level college professor, I was making some very decent money, and so there was no complaints there. However, I started to get tired, and because not only teaching all these different classes, just in addition to the time, but I have paperwork, I have grading, I have emails from students. So, and I'm talking twice the load of a normal professor. So,
Yeah, of course. It must have been
and
heavy.
I was also I'm out of a committee. You asked me to be in the committee. I said sure. So the minimum service for a college, usually on a collegiate level, is one committee and one service project per faculty member. I was on 4, 5. That one, sure. You need that extra money. I'll do it. I'll do it. I raise my hand. I'll do it. And I even had some other faculty members pull me aside saying, like, "Are you okay with this? They're taking advantage of you." No, they're not. It's fine. Well, long story short, I received burnout, which we'll talk a little bit later. But I, the harshest lesson when I say hitting rock bottom was that my fourth year, which is for college professors is 5, at least in the United States, is 5 years before you get tenure.
Okay.
Whereas most primary school is 3 years in the United States at least. So this is 5 years. The end of the fourth year is kind of like the critical moment, if we're at a 5, whether or not you're going to get tenure. So we during this time when I was teaching, we had a change in administration and completely gutted, from upper administration was gone. The new administration came in with making cuts, making a lot of sweeping cuts. And they told each department, you're going to have to cut 1 or 2 faculty members out of your tenure track rules. We're not giving everybody tenure. So, and ultimately, that was about between the whole college, 14 or 15 of us in various departments.
Hmm.
So you can kind of guess where I'm going with who was the first to be cut in my department. And for me, that was a huge trauma at the time. Now I look back, it was the best thing that happened to me. But at that time, I didn't take it well. I was spiraled into a deep depression, and I couldn't understand it. I had accolades, I had awards, I had certificates, I had dozens of letters from students telling me how I changed their life. I had, a whole set of at least over 50 classes where I was evaluated top notch. So you couldn't explain it looking why was I denied tenure? one of the things that I think was so traumatic with me was I realized that I wasn't respected. And as I did my research later on, it makes perfect sense. Usually, people pleasers are not respected by authority, even though that's what we're trying to get, trying very hard to get. It will backfire. And now, looking back in hindsight, if I set boundaries, would that have made a difference? I don't know, and I'm not going to sit and play that through my head because the past is the past.
Mm.
But I would definitely say to anybody who's new is it's start putting your foot down. Look, your whatever. Look at your minimum requirements. What is your job requirements? Stick to that. If you want to do an extra project here and there, go for it. But really listen to yourself. Do you fully want to do this or not? Because most people pleasers will say yes, even if in their head and all their body is saying no. They don't want to do it. Listen to yourself. If you don't want to do it, again, you can be gracious enough and say, "Hi, thank you for thinking of me. Unfortunately, it's not going to work with my schedule. However, can I help you out in other ways? Can I what I could have done now is said to them, "Well, I know you need to hire some adjunct professors. Can I help you maybe screen some of these people and have them come in and teach these extra classes that are need to be staffed?" So therefore, I'm still helping out, but I'm not taking on this role and taking on too much and being because when you're burnt out as an educator, you're no help to anybody. I can tell you that from personal experience.
100%, Dr. Bramante. Thank you so much for that because in the beginning, when you were saying that you were taking on all of these classes and it was more money, which may or may not happen with a teacher, the fact is, even if you're getting more money, you almost have to ask yourself, well, how much is your health worth? Because your health, that you can't get that back all the time. Like it costs a lot of money to manage stress and burnout. And if you just take that time for yourself instead of taking on so many things, in the end, you're still
Hmm.
making money, quote unquote, because you're not spending all of that money on more healthcare, on, stress management and things to that effect. So I appreciate you saying that because it's true. I have a template of burnout. I'm going to actually link it in the show notes of just phrases that teachers can use to help when they need to say no. Not with burnout, sorry, with setting boundaries. I have
Hmm.
just sort of a list of phrases they can say because I feel that in the beginning, I wish I had had that list. I wish I had had what could I say? Like you have given great ideas as well. I would love to help you. Unfortunately, it's not going to work today. Just having that ability to be like, okay, this is what I could say if someone says, if someone wants me to work extra, I feel is so important. And remembering that it is about it's your life, you know?
Hmm.
And
100%. Yeah.
yeah. And also I think the idea that you still didn't get tenure, right? Understanding that 95, I'd say percent, I would even hesitate to say even more, but like we're replaceable. And often we say yes and yes and yes because we feel like this is going to make me not replaceable. That is so wrong. You are still replaceable. They're asking you because you're saying yes.
Hmm.
And it's just
100%. And at the end of the day, it's they made out of respecting you by asking you to do this, and that was the real lesson here was, look, I was not really respected, and what I really heard in a sense was not just me, but there were a few of us in our department that were hired. We had a chair who happened to unfortunately pass away soon after I got hired, but we had a chair of our department who advocated for two of us. That the administration we learned later didn't want us.
okay.
They but because my chair was insistent and had a lot of seniority in the college, set it in there. And now looking back in hindsight, it all makes sense. And but I didn't see it that way. I was blind eye. I was like,
Huh.
I'm so excited to be here. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I love what I do, but pace yourself is the most important thing I would say now. Because for burnout, especially, it hits you like no, like for me, it just came out of nowhere. It was like almost like overnight, and it wasn't just a minor thing was major. I'm sure there were warning signs to begin with, but it was just boom.
Yeah. What do you think were some of the warning signs? Like, if you look back, like, just for if the person listening right now might be wondering if they are on the edge of burnout or experiencing burnout, like, what are some of the warning
So,
that you think you
and these are subtle. These are subtle. So, what I would say definitely number one would be: are you finding yourself getting short with the people around you, like maybe a little bit more short tempered, a little irritable? Not necessarily nasty, full blown, but you're slightly getting more irritable than you normally would be, and that could be a warning sign. Um, Another warning sign: are you slightly missing deadlines a little bit, dropping the ball a bit? And I'm not talking about like major, I'm talking about like minor things at first. Are you dropping the ball? That's what started happening with me. I started dropping the ball on things, and those are so subtle signs. And then start looking at this physiology too. This is so important. Are you finding yourself sleeping too much,
Mm.
not sleeping enough, like having insomnia? Are you finding yourself getting like maybe certain behaviors of students or the faculty members getting you a little under your skin than they normally would? Like you find yourself getting a little bit more bothered by things. Um, that might be a sign. Eating too much or not eating it, losing your appetite or having a voracious appetite. So for me, it started being just very incredibly tired, and I'm talking exhausted. And it just started building and building and building to the point where I'd come home on a Friday night and wouldn't really get out of my bed till Sunday night. I
Wow.
was exhausted,
Yeah.
and I had struggled sometimes staying focused during the week. So it really became a problem. And I remember other people in my life were like, "I'm worried about you." They were concerned about me because I was pretty much almost a zombie at this point. And you're absolutely right because I didn't necessarily go to a doctor. I think I just took some time off a little bit. Where thankfully this is right around the time the new administration came in, and right before they let us go, they said, "Okay, we're gonna reduce the number of classes that full time members can teach." And which meant, of course, a pay cut. But oh man, that feels so much better when they only gave us like maybe a maximum of six instead of 10, like one extra class overtime was like the max. And for me, that was a huge game changer because it was only like half my load. And that's when I started to reignite my love again and interest in teaching. So, but I would say slowly, if you start missing deadlines,
Yeah.
letting things, dropping the ball a bit, getting irritable or short with people around you, your family, your loved ones. If you find yourself sleeping, differently or eating differently, these are things that should be addressed, and that can possibly burn out, and or even just dreading, like, oh, I gotta go to school today, I gotta teach today. And you start even looking more cynical. I think that's another thing too. Are you almost developing a more cynical attitude?
Right. Like, you can't see the
And for
positive things in your life. It's
And that started to come with me when I started almost looking at the students in a bit cynical way. And once I really took it happening, it was like, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening? Why am I looking at that? And the reason why I say you're not helpful to anybody, because, you know, while that's important for me to understand, but it wasn't fair to the students in my class. It wasn't fair to the other faculty members around me, to have me dropping the ball like that.
yeah.
So that's where I'm like, okay, no, and burnout's a real issue because not only just affects you, it affects the people around you.
For me, it was when you said dropping the ball, that was the first sign that I was approaching burnout at one of my schools. And my decision at that point, I dropped the ball on two major things. And I think my decision at that point was to change schools. That was my decision. And that made a massive, massive difference. And I know that there might be teachers out there like for me, that was huge. I mean, if you're experiencing burnout, that is definitely something to consider. I want to know from your side, what what do you think? I mean, we always talk about like self-care and taking care of yourself. When you're in that state of burnout, it is very difficult to start to pull yourself out. So what are some of the smaller things or the shifts that we can do, whether it's a mindset shift or a habit shift? Um, what would you recommend? For me, I think it's almost like, almost like going for a walk, like starting to recognize that you need to recognize how important you are and start to really analyze like where is the burnout coming from and how can you start taking some things off your plate. That's me. What do you think? Like what would be some of the smaller shifts? Where would you start?
I would start with even the physical, like you said, taking a walk, um, getting outside the house, and then take a step back and say, okay, what can I do that can automate the process a bit? So
Yeah.
like now I teach part time, and I'm in a completely different institution. I like it here, um, but I still am service to the teacher, but I keep the paperwork to a very bare minimum. Where I have a lot of self grading assignments. That kind of does it for you.
Yeah.
So I would say try to automate, but I would also do some really self care. If that means um, taking walks, whatever it is you need to self care. Maybe that might mean taking a vacation a bit after the school year is over and just getting out of your surroundings for a little while. And but also the important thing is again to start setting some boundaries with
Yes.
yourself as well as with your staff and all that. And that would be the main thing. But to pull yourself out of it's going to be a slow, gradual process, and to even know that that's happening because most of the time we don't even realize that that's happening.
Yeah.
For me, it didn't really realize after no, I was like, "Oh, well, I do this is complete burnout." Because when my class load was kind of drastically reduced, not by choice, it made a large difference. I was like, now I really like it. I love it again. It didn't last much longer after that at college, but I still loved it. And so I think the important thing is to self care is extremely important. It's not, and it's not like oh I can do it later. No, it's a non negotiable. I
Right.
feel at this point.
It's an everyday
Not
thing.
absolutely, and not taking work home with you. I mean, even if let's say you have as a teacher you may have to grade papers, so or grade tests or correct tests and do that. Maybe find a way to do that at your lunch hour or while you're eating or while you're or stay a half an hour after school and just grade. And then therefore when you go home, you don't take anything home.
Yeah.
Or, get everything done during the week. So this way your weekends are complete boundaries. And what you can say is like, I'm not going to answer emails over the weekend unless it's urgent, absolutely urgent. But if we're going to wait till Monday, I'm going to get back to you on Monday. And I even know some of my colleagues where I now teach, where they actually put their syllabus to their students, do not email me over the weekend. I am not checking my email over the weekend. And I feel like that's a really good step in self protection. So setting those types of boundaries are important. So we could say, okay, I'm not going to do any grading on the weekend. I'm not going to do anything teaching related. Because ideally, that's the whole reason why we were given weekends for time off. So that we're and I don't mean like time off haphazard. I'm talking about a full on time off.
Mhm.
So setting those complete boundaries are an important thing. Creating a schedule is also because a lot of times, and myself included, I had a disorganized like workflow. that I was just like, whoa, and I think that also contributed to the
Me too.
burnout, where I did develop a systemize. Okay, this time of the week I'm going to be grading this. This time of the week I'm going to be grading that. And then even taking a look at your teaching. Like, now, of course, if you're in primary school, you may be required to give a certain number of assignments and specific types of assignments required. But take a look if you can. Is there something you can eliminate? Do that. You know, because for me, I did like the paperwork in the beginning, but then it became just tedious to do the paperwork. Which is grading. All the time. So for me, I love teaching. So what can I do to really minimize the amount of paperwork I have, but still provide the immense value? That's the important thing is take a step back. What can I do to give value? And what can I trim that's not, going to be completely necessary? That might mean not giving your personal email if you're a primary school teacher, not giving your personal email to parents, only sharing your work email.
Yes,
And
or your phone number.
I would, yeah, I would not. I mean, and when I was younger, and I almost cringe at this, but I gave all my students my phone number.
Yeah.
What if I was? If I had to ask myself, I would probably slap myself around now and say, "What were you thinking?"
Yeah.
You know. But of course, I wanted to be there, but I was like, no, because I was getting calls on the weekends. I was getting calls, texts on, Sunday night. I can't make it to class Monday morning. Things like that, or questions before tests. And it got to a point where I was like, no, I don't give any number out anymore. I give the only thing you see on my syllabus is the college email.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And it's worked out well. My quality of education, even my quality of student evaluations have not changed.
Yes.
So but my peace of mind is definitely much better. So setting boundaries, I think, like that is extremely important, and that could be like taking a step back. What could I let us do? And are you if you're giving yourself number to parents, stop doing that. If you're giving your personal email out, don't do that. Give your work email out, and that's it.
I love that.
Because
Yeah.
if you think about it, we're providers. We're not there to be friends. We're not there to be confidants. We're not there to be anything else but teachers and providers. And you can still do a great job as a provider. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, that's all you are as a provider. And look at it like that, and it's much more freeing. I mean, I know some people say, well, that's not, I really care. And you care. I care for my students a lot, but there's my own boundaries too. And it doesn't compromise my teaching. It doesn't compromise anything.
Well, you said it yourself, right? Like, what good are you as a teacher if you are burnt out, like, and you are overly stressed and you are depressed and you're sleeping all weekend or you're short with the people around you? What good are you then? You're not. You
Yeah,
have
yeah, you're actually counterproductive. It's going to work against you, at this point, and it is not fun. And I've had teachers too. You can recognize burnout right away. They're cynical. They walk in, they're yelling all the time at the students. They're hurling even insults at the students, and at that point, I've even had teachers. Now, this is before I was even trained as psychologist. Even when I was in middle school, high school, where a few of them almost on the pull aside. I think it's time to leave. I think it's time to pack it in
yeah.
because if you're so cynical like that, because even when I was younger as a college professor, I would meet a lot of senior faculty, and I would hear them all they would do all day long is complain about students, and I'm sitting there going like, I will never become that.
Yeah.
I will never become that. At this point, it's like, you're not being helpful.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's not being helpful to you either. It's something that you want to come in. You want to be, the light that comes in. You don't want to be the storm that comes in.
That's a great way to say it. You don't want it. We need to be the light, not causing more problems, but actually being the solution. And it starts with self care.
Yes. 100%. That's so powerful, everything you said there. Thank you so much for that. Just for a couple of quick final thoughts. So, how do you move yourself quickly from a negative mindset, talking about the light in the storm, from a negative mindset into a positive mindset? What's your go-to?
Well, I think first acknowledging that it's normal that we have negative thoughts up in our head. I mean, there's estimated 70,000 thoughts enter our brain every day.
Yeah.
Now, what I sometimes will do is take a walk, take a break. Um, don't act on it like initially, because a lot of times when people will make mistakes and do something rash when they're reacting out of a negative mindset. Or wait till it too shall pass, and then react on it, and then So I would say don't react. Number one, if the thought comes in, let it process it for a bit, sleep on it, even if it's like, oh, I don't think this is going to work out, or maybe I want to leave this company. Sleep on it for a bit, and then because you'll notice sometimes if you just need a nap, or
Hmm.
you take a walk, or even just whatever it is you need to do that gives you joy, do that for a bit, and then come back to it. Um, Sometimes if might mean just going outside, taking a walk for a half hour walk and then coming back in, and you'd be surprised how amazing that can be a transformation.
Oh, I agree. I'm a big fan of the walk, just to breathe in the air, and a lot of your greatest ideas come at that point as well. And last question today, Dr. Bramante. What three things are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for opportunities like this to be having conversations on podcasts. I'm grateful for my clients, and I'm just grateful to do what I love.
Amazing. I love that. That's asking about gratitude. That's one of my quickest ways to move from the negative into the positive.
Well, very powerful, absolutely.
Yes. Well, I'm so grateful for you that you joined me today. And I really appreciate all the incredible tips and strategies and advice, and sharing your story with us today, and how you're helping. I know that you help the listener with issue if they're having any issues with burnout or self-sabotage or any of that. And I just really wish you the most incredible success with your book. I hope you have a fantastic year. And yeah, I just really want to thank you. Thank you so much.
I really want to thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. I love to keep in touch and all that.
Definitely.
All right. Well, have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day.